Hello and welcome. We are so excited to have you here. Hello, as everyone is joining. Welcome. We're so excited to have you. Hello. All right, here we go. We can see the numbers climbing. This is so exciting. Hello and welcome. We are so excited to have you here to discuss how Lucid's top customers use Lucid. So as you're joining, please introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're joining from, and we would also love to know your role. So go ahead, jump in the chat, tell us where you're joining from and your role and your name. So while you all are jumping into the chat, we will introduce ourselves as well. So hello, everyone. My name is Morgan Skidmore, and I have the pleasure of being your host today. My role at Lucid is that of a learning experience designer. So if any of you on the call have experienced Lucid training labs, that is what I do. I help customers collaborate more effectively and efficiently by creating interactive and engaging learning experiences in the Lucid Suite. So that's me. I'm Morgan. I'm your host. Let's see some of our participants today. Oh my gosh, they're coming in so fast. Hello, Kate. Hello, Jim. Hello, Melissa, Jenny. All right. Hi, Carrie. Hi, Patrick. This is awesome. Let me pass it over now to Christopher Bailey, our principal professional services consultant here at Lucid. Christopher, take it away.
Yeah, hello. It is great to be here. Welcome everyone to our session today. As mentioned, I'm Christopher Bailey. I have been with Lucid for a couple of years, and prior to coming to Lucid, I spent about 15 years at a big Fortune 5 company running agile transformations, doing project management, doing new product development, spinning up innovation teams. And I use a lot of that experience to help our customers to leverage the Lucid Suite towards those same kinds of ends, those same kinds of business results. So I'm thrilled to be able to share a couple of those use cases with you all today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Christopher. And now we also have Joseph Whiting with us. Joseph is a solutions consultant here at Lucid. Joseph, introduce yourself.
Hey, thanks, Morgan. Hey, everyone. My name is Joseph Whiting, and I'm a solutions consultant here at Lucid. So my job is basically to take the awesome power of the Lucid Suite and get our customers what they need. So customizing and really doing the fringe out there use cases that really put our product in its deepest value. So I love my job. I love working here at Lucid. I've been doing that for about 2 years. Before that, I was a design thinking coach and consultant for various government institutes, startups, and in companies like that. So yeah, very excited to be here today and show you some of the cool things we're doing with Lucid's top customers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So as you can see, everyone here in the webinar, we have some experts with us today, and I'm so excited for what they have to share. So let's see in the chat again. We have Angela, Jess, Sheriel, Israel. Let's see. I saw Joe from Kansas City. I'm originally from Kansas City, so that is exciting. Not sure if you're a Chiefs fan, but that's where I'm at. We also, let's see, we have George and Marjorie and let's see, Travis. Oh my gosh, this is awesome from all over Canada, Nebraska. So cool. Thank you all so much for being here today. Before we get started, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items and give a shout out to the Lucid Tech team that is behind the scenes today. So if you see any of the Lucid Tech team interacting in the chat, those are the amazing people that are behind the scenes helping us answer all of your questions. So as we get going, I just want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. So you can expect an email with a link to the recording within a day or two. So it'll be sent to the email you used to register for this webinar. So again, it is being recorded and you will receive a copy of that recording. So in that email, you will also receive some additional resources. So throughout the presentation today, we will include some links to some amazing templates. So you'll have access to those from that email that you get after the webinar. We can see that many of you are already participating via chat. This is awesome. UK, London, UAE, Texas, St. Louis, Colombia, amazing. So feel free, yeah, as we're going along, hop into the chat and share your thoughts. So what you'll want to do is make sure that your chat setting is set to sending to everyone so that everyone can participate in the discussion and see your comments. But if you have any questions specifically for our Lucid team, that team I mentioned that's in the background, shout out to them. They will be able to keep track of your questions and answer your questions easier if you use the Q&A feature. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see the Q&A icon. So send your questions there, and that way we can stay on top of things and answer as many as we can. All right, so last but not least, live captions are enabled for this webinar. So you can go ahead and turn those on if you'd like. And one last thing is that I have all of your chats on one side and the presentation on another side. So if it looks like I'm not looking at you or any of us aren't looking at you, it's just because we are looking at two different screens. So we are here with you. We are not distracted. We're just trying to keep track of everything that's going on. Okay, are you ready? Drop in the chat. Who's ready? We are going to share how Lucid's top customers use the Lucid Suite to transform complex data into clear, compelling visual systems. That's what we're doing today. So give a shout out in the chat. Here we go. We're ready. Let's go. I am curious if anyone deals with spreadsheets and analytics in their day-to-day. So give us a shout out if you are in the trenches with data in your day-to-day work, because we want to talk about, yes, okay, lots of confirmation here. We want to talk about why it matters that we can take all of that data, put it into the Lucid Suite and visualize it. Like, why does that matter? Why do we want to visualize data? And it's because if you think about it, sometimes it can be hard to understand. All of these people, all of you that are saying yes, it can sometimes be hard to understand at a glance what all these spreadsheets are telling us, right? So let alone sharing them with someone who maybe isn't familiar with that format. So the customers that we're going to tell you about today have taken their data, used it to create these visual systems in the Lucid Suite, and then use it to communicate across their entire organization. So we're talking like thousands of people that are able to interact and understand data so quickly. And that's why Lucid is key. It's not only powerful with lots of cool, capabilities, it's also easy to use. So any non-technical teams out there, anyone on a non-technical team, shout out, because the Lucid Suite can meet the needs of both technical and non-technical teams, which is, that's the magic right there. So ultimately, customers choose Lucid because it supports their entire workflow. So visualizing data allows for more innovation, creative thinking, and collaboration from start to finish. So you can tell I get really excited about visualizing data, but enough hype from me. I think we're all ready to see the examples. So Christopher, let's pass it over to you. Can you tell us how companies and how the customers you've worked with approach using Lucid to accomplish all of these amazing things across their massive organizations? What do you have?
Absolutely. There's, as you're noting, there's a lot that's under the hood with Lucid. And it can be difficult for some teams in order to get to that point where they're actually thinking in the mindset of visualizing information, visual collaboration. What our most successful customers do in order to create this culture shift is they use a flywheel approach to manage the change to visual collaboration. They start by focusing on key initial outcomes that they're trying to drive, and they drive work to enable individuals and validate success along the way. And then they celebrate early wins in order to build momentum and inspire others. At which point, then they reconsider outcomes and then run through that loop again. This should actually feel very similar to well-established change management models. This is the model that we use and customers use, our successful customers use, in order to create some of this culture shift and change. Now, for those who are looking to accelerate their time to value and return on investment with Lucid, we do offer professional services to assist with this flywheel, whether that's live training, which, by the way, is in addition to our already fabulous on-demand education and badges, or technical configuration, or even solution consulting, where we can come in and build complex templates or systems or reimagine internal workflows like some of the ones that you're going to see today. So that's how our customers end up getting there.
Awesome. Okay, great information to know the approach and support that you offer. So let's jump into some examples. Who's excited to see these examples that I've been hyping up so much? So Christopher, can you tell us a little bit about the different examples that you're going to be sharing with us today?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be discussing a handful of different use cases like scenario dashboarding and modeling, process management, as well as architecture diagramming, all using that foundation of the suite and the platform and leveraging data in order to make those visuals come alive. To get started, we're going to discuss how a leading financial services corporation, one of the largest in the world, used Lucid to achieve digital equity and improve their internal processes. One of those processes included an example that we're going to share here with you today, which is scenario dashboarding and modeling. So I'm going to turn it over to Joseph to introduce this first use case to us.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Well, let's start off with the problem. I think for any good story, we have to have a good problem here. So I want you to imagine a company that's so big that it has more offices than your company may have employees. And they have to coordinate all these different offices. And as this company does a return to office policy, it's important to make sure that you have enough seats in each office. How many seats do you have in each city? Because you may have multiple offices in each city. What does the growth look like in that particular area? Are they going to be adding more seats to the particular locations? These are questions that were being asked by this particular client. Now, I want you to extrapolate that a little bit more and think about what other kind of resource management are you doing on your side that you could model in a similar way that we're going to show you here in a second. The real solution that we brought in was one that allowed them to not just see in a Excel sheet what's going to happen if you do this or that, but to visualize it powerfully so that you can communicate with stakeholders and say, hey, this is the impact if we only added X amount over those various years. But enough of me talking about it. Let's do what Lucid does best and let's show you. So diving into the location strategy dashboard, what this allows us to do, and this is what it allowed the customer to do, is to visualize the different data points that are necessary over here on the left. It shows how many seats are available. They're at -3. They need to add seats to this particular location. It shows what the projected available seats will look like in the coming years as they expand floors, as they add seats, and as the workforce shifts and grows with their particular location. It gives other critical details and allows them to kind of see a snapshot of that particular location. Over here on the right, we've got the scenario modeler, which allows us to see, okay, if we add 80 seats, that's what's going to happen here. Let's see. Oh, okay. So if we assume that we're going to add 8 different employees, that's what we've got there. And if we change this to 5, or even if we change it to 2, we can see what the expected change is going to look like over here. And we can see those percentages of capacity change in an instant. So we can automatically model out and show the data and how it changes. We can see the cost per seat, and we can model out how many more we would need. So we may need 3 or 4, depending on that. What if the expected headcount growth per year actually expands and we're going to increase by 80? Then we're going to have some big problems on our hands, and we're really going to have to look at investing in this particular location. But this is just a start of what we can do with Lucid. What we can also do is bring in our data linking tooling to come in and replace the data set and say, well, let's stop looking at Boston and instead let's look at downtown Houston, right? We're going to replace that data set. You'll notice that that automatically shifts for me, and I can see that we actually have 2 available seats here. So we're in a different situation here, and I can come in and model out the changes that we might be expecting. So I'm going to change that to... if we don't do any changes right now, we're fine until 2027. I can quickly see and model out the impacts of my team. Now, I'd mentioned that imagine a really big company that has more offices than you may have employees at your company. They can model out all their different locations in Houston or in the Dallas-Houston area, and they can see, oh, you know what? we have extra resources here. Maybe we shift those resources to this location or to this location. And they're doing it visually. They're not doing it with Excel sheets. They're not doing it with data sets. They're doing it visually within Lucid. It's harnessing that power of intelligent diagramming with the human attribute of visually organizing information with our minds. So this is what I get really excited about within Lucid. And this is where I really just want to dive into the impact. Yes, it saves them money. Yes, it saves them time. But what really the customer told me was, this is so powerful for me to go to my stakeholders and make decisions, because they're understanding these bar charts. They're understanding this quick dashboard, and they don't have to read an Excel sheet. Instead, they can come in and they can see the visual impact of, this is what's going to happen if we don't do anything until 2027. So once again, this is a quick look at how you can do data dashboarding and data modeling within Lucid to see and build the future. Back to you, Morgan.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Joseph, I would just wanted to answer a really quick question about the data. Where did you get that data in the side panel? If you could just tell everybody where that data came from.
Oh, yeah, that's sure. Absolutely. So within Lucid, we can import data from CSVs. We can import it from Excel. To mess with this yourself and to try it, you can come to import data. From here, you can make org charts from data, process diagrams, sales maps, sales templates. You can model out your UML sequences. In this case, I did data linking and I pulled in a Google Sheet from some dummy data. Obviously, this isn't customer data. This is all fake data that we've developed on our side. So you can bring in a CSV or other data that you'd like to by clicking that import your data. Back to you, Morgan.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, really quick, that's so cool. You can just drag and drop your data, and then the visuals update. And I can see how when you're talking with stakeholders trying to make decisions and being able to model out or, test a few different decisions and options makes things go so much faster, because you can, you're kind of forecasting, right? It makes that decision-making process just so much more visual and informative and efficient. So thank you so much, Joseph. We could see some hype in the chat. Like, it's so impressive. That's awesome. So thank you so much for showing us how even the most complex, workflows and data sets can be visual and digestible. That's really awesome. So for everyone here on this webinar, if you want to try it out for yourself, so like that data linking that Joseph just showed us, importing your data sets, you can try this out. So you can scan the QR code that's on the screen, or the link has also been shared in the chat by our amazing tech team. And so you should, jump in and try it out. This is a great jumping off point to just start experimenting with visualizing in Lucidchart. So, all right, next. We have an organization in the automotive industry. So we just did financial, and Christopher, do you wanna show us the automotive example?
Yeah, absolutely. So previously, this company tried to document over 160 individual sub-processes within SAP. These processes included everything from order fulfillment to inventory management to accounting and human resources. Plus, they had data around each individual step in that process that tied back to their documentation. Now, as you can imagine, this was a complex repository of information. And the issue was that documentation was housed in a third-party system, making it really challenging for individual teams to actually use that valuable information, see it visually, or navigate this complex hierarchy of information that it was actually housed within. So this mega corporation commissioned the professional services team to come in and turn complicated, inaccessible data into a clear picture that they could then manage and update more efficiently. So let's jump into this and show you a bit of how this works. There's actually two levels to this. Within SAP, there's actually a number of layers of processes and a hierarchy within those processes for how they actually filter up. There's 4 separate layers within there. To handle the first 3 layers, we created a process launchpad. The idea here is that any individual within this company could come in and find, through navigating this hierarchy, the individual processes that they needed to execute. So somebody that is in a purchasing process and they need to understand what are the steps that I need to go through in SAP in order to accomplish my work. Where are those steps and how do I find them? They would leverage this launchpad through one of two different ways. They could use Control F and find anywhere within this document those key phrases, or more commonly, they would use the links that we had created directly here on this board. So here at this top level, you'll see we had the first 13, or the top 13, the main 13 level 1 process areas that SAP has. SAP being the system, not the company that we're talking about here. Within that, they could then click on, in this case, design, sell, and market, and move to the level 2 area of that information. And so here at the top, you end up seeing marketing, sales, order to cash. This is the level 2, the way that SAP organizes processes that they were able to see. And then within each one of these, you'll see another little block here, a button, that takes you to a level 3 process document. So in this case, manage sales orders, you can then link out to a document that shows you all of the processes that live underneath that level 3 area. This is how people were able to quickly find, using the navigation here, or to use Control F to find those documents within here. If I was to click on Manage Sales Orders, then that would pop up one of the process documents that we had talked about before. Now, I've already preloaded this just so that we can quickly get to it here. So imagine that an individual had gone in and clicked it. What they would see here is the process steps. This is not the live steps for them, for this company, but sort of a example version of what creating a sales order would look like. And this individual can go in and they can see their steps, what a customer would be doing, and then the different steps that they would need to do, in this case as a sales rep, to accomplish the work that they needed to do. In order to get to any other detail around this, if there were specific steps within SAP that they needed to accomplish, that's where they would leverage the custom data associated with each one of these individual process steps. So if I click on this first populate area and document information, and in the upper right-hand corner, hit contextual panel and click on the data panel, I'm going to see a handful of custom data that we had added in order to capture all of this information that was coming from this third-party system. Again, this is an example, not their live data. But here they would have the process step, the system that it's associated with, the scope, the department. They would also have descriptions in here as well that would highlight all of that information. Particularly within the description, it would have the individual process steps. And then we used, for some of this information that we wanted to make sure was readily accessible to any individual, we used conditional formatting in order to highlight that information. So up here at the top, I've got conditional formatting. And if I was to take a look at, for instance, the system conditional formatting, you'll see that I'm looking at if the shape data, the system contains SAP, then I'm going to show certain information, in this case, a text badge that says SAP, and position its placement. Or if it contains email, I'm going to put something else similarly. With conditional formatting, I can now highlight based off of the information that's here in this process shape to quickly show SAP or email, or I also have another conditional formatting that I can hover over the I. If I did this over here on create sales record, you can see, in this case, just an example of a description here that on hover shows, and I'm using formulas within that conditional formatting to highlight and show information within here. This makes it really easy for an individual to come in and see the details that they need in order to complete the work that they need. Additionally, there were a couple of other things that made this one a little bit more complex. One thing was that there was some additional context about this, about these steps that didn't really fit into the metadata associated with steps. And so we also leveraged some additional functionality within Lucid, like layers and actions to create buttons in here. So I can click on this additional context, and I can show or hide this additional context layer to see additional information within this. The other thing where this really became powerful for them was what you're seeing here in this process step is what they call the Americas template, the template for all of the areas in the Americas. There is the possibility for certain regions to have slight differences to that process. And so again, with layers and actions, we created some layers with Argentina's information. And if I click on that, then I can see Argentina has this sub-process within here. Or if I click on Brazil, I can see that there's actually some unique steps that I can overlay on top of this process that show Brazil does a couple of these things slightly different. And so this allows them to centralize all this information along with unique attributes that may be differences by region within the same document, leveraging in this case layers and actions. So this is how they're taking all of this complex information and then finding a way to be able to make that really easy and accessible to individuals. But then also as we think about the management of this information, now instead of emails going back and forth and people saying, well, where is that process step? What's the update that needs to happen? They can use comments directly here in the document or notes to make sure that the process team knows that there's a process step that needs to get updated. And it'll send notifications out via Slack or Teams or email to let people know about those changes, depending on the way in which you're letting people know about that in Lucid. The big impact from this comes from the way that they mapped everything together in this complex system. By mapping their systems and processes in Lucid, this corporation was able to have a living blueprint of their business available at all times. This allowed them to then manage and update the processes way more efficiently. This documentation also created the foundation for them to bring in and map systems data to their processes. So similar to what you saw with Joseph, where we were doing data linking and bringing outside data in and mapping it to shapes in here, they now have that ability to do that and can see the health of a process and take quick action to address issues. This visual scaffolding was essential to help employees find and digest critical information for their role. Additionally, last big thing, with the ability to tie this to systems information back to their processes with data linking, they were able to save hundreds of thousands of dollars through consolidating their tech stack and leveraging a single powerful platform. That's the power of the Lucid Suite in this case.
Love it. Thank you, Christopher. This is awesome. Two quick call outs that I think you made that were really important is you talked about how often when we have, a question about a process or it's stored in multiple places, you're sending emails back and forth. And I was kind of laughing as you were talking because I was imagining if someone was trying to type out in text or using, words to describe this process, how many pages of text would that be to describe that many processes that you had embedded there? And that is so amazing. And I think you had said this earlier, but it creates this centralized single source of truth that everyone can access what they need. And the team that owns it can also make updates whenever needed. That is
Absolutely.
just so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, in fact, the system that this was coming from, the way that we had to move this documentation in was they had to export it into PDF and Word documents. And so, yes, we did have 70-page documents that we were going through in order to pull that information into Lucid and make that much more visual. So vast improvement to what they were using previously.
That is so awesome. And this is a feature that I use is setting the document status. So saying, this process document is currently active. Okay, so or this is a document that a process that we are building out, and then being able to lock it down so that while everyone can see it and use the embedded features in there and the different layers and links and things, no one can edit it except the owners of the document, right?
Mhm.
So have you seen that also benefit customers as they're using these throughout their entire organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly in this case where they did have vast amounts of individuals that they wanted to go in, but they wanted to make sure that they didn't make changes and adaptations, but that flowed through sort of a thoughtful process. That was actually a piece that we helped them with, was putting together that approvals process and leveraging functionality within Lucid, like you have the ability to tag documents with things like this is a draft version or this is an approved version. That made a huge difference for them, so that not only did they have the documents in a place that was secure and the right permissions and all of that stuff, while having people have access to them, but they also had a visual way to be able to see what is the current status of any one of these documents, so that they could quickly go in and say, oh, we need to update that one, or hey, here's an update, or this one is fully approved and really good state.
So cool. You're getting a lot of validation in the chat here. Visual scaffolding, love it. Renard said scenario is exactly what I'm trying to do. Good stuff. Sarah is taking notes. This is awesome. This is awesome. Thank you all so much for your excitement and for being here. We love sharing how the Lucid Suite has benefited our customers, and we're excited to see what you all do with it. Speaking of which, we have another template for you if you want to, get your hands dirty and try working with these different processes and features and things like that. So again, just scan the QR code, or the link was just placed in the chat by our amazing tech team. And I'll just give you a second to scan that QR code or click that link. And then let's move on to our last use case. So Christopher, this is back to you. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, here you go.
So in this last case, we're going to be talking through a template that we designed to help teams collaboratively develop architecture diagrams. So think in terms of systems architecture, digital architecture. In this case, we were working with a major fast food company that commissioned our team to build a custom template to them to help along these lines. Their goal in this case was to enable faster development, reduce rework, and produce higher quality deliverables in the end. So let's jump into this and show you what it looks like. Looking at the diagram, at first glance, it should look very, very simplistic, but it's actually the functionality underneath that allows this to really come alive. So here at a high level, you see a very simple architecture diagram with a database in the center, a hub that it's connecting to, a couple of different systems, customer that interacts with it, pieces of that nature. But on the left-hand side, you'll see a couple of other things that we have in here. We have some additional actions that people can take, as well as a diagram key that highlights the standardized set of lines and shapes that they wanted individuals to be able to leverage. In this case, we actually focus them on these specific shapes that we custom built for them, so that they can standardize the way that they wanted to diagram systems across the organization, versus each enterprise architect going in and using something that they were comfortable with. That created a lot of rework individually or across the organization, and slowed down communications because you had to translate that visual language that was personal to you, versus using a standard language. So we helped them standardize on a specific set of shapes that they wanted to leverage. We also created a shape library for them that they could then access on the left navigation. You won't see it here in this case, but that contained each one of these shapes in here. Looking at the diagram itself, you're going to notice a couple of things when we start clicking on the shapes within here. So if I click on the Blaze system, for instance, again, this is example information, so this is not their live system information. A couple of things that you'll notice if I click on the contextual panel here. You'll notice that similar to the previous ones that you've seen, we have some custom data associated with it, but then we also have some information that's coming from a spreadsheet in this case. Looking over at the data linking area, we've got a single system spreadsheet that this data is coming from. This allowed them to be able to standardize on a specific data set, and then without having some other things standardized yet, create the space where they could begin standardizing on a couple of different data elements that they hadn't agreed to just yet. So things like the status or business capability and whatnot. In any case, every single one of those data elements, we can then use again with conditional formatting to highlight information and make that very easy for individuals to be able to see. So if I go up into the conditional formatting, one of the things that you'll notice within there is I've got a rule in the conditional formatting for retiring systems, and that allows me to turn on and off whether a system is retiring or not. If it says retiring, then I'm going to show this icon. If it doesn't, then it wouldn't, along with a handful of other potential things that we could highlight within there. The other thing, the way that we're actually getting that data into these, if I just create sort of an example shape here, I can use this data that I've already linked and drag and drop any one of these items here onto this shape. And that's automatically going to update it and then highlight any information that's relevant on the shape itself. So the conditional formatting already is going to highlight natural elements that we've already included and developed for that. Additionally, we made it easy to be able to turn on and off these elements by putting them into actions. So if I go into the upper left-hand corner, back to these actions here, I could toggle the retiring. So again, here I'm using actions to toggle the conditional formatting to say, well, it's kind of busy. I just want to focus in on this. So I'm going to turn off retiring, or maybe I'm going to turn off strategic value. Or if there were other elements like the point of sale or personal information, or personnel information, I can show those elements or hide them directly on this. Where this was especially useful in centralizing a lot of this is showing them the target state. So if I click on the show target state, that's then going to show this new target state that we want this system in. So centrally now, I've got a single document that holds both the current plus the future state, and I'm just using a layer to hold that future state and toggling it again with actions, using also some colors and shading in order to make these things look more like buttons that people would be able to click within here. Where this really got to magic for this group was the area where we used this data linking to a central spreadsheet. This enterprise architect had this spreadsheet of information that he was using on the side, but it's really difficult for him to maintain that and keep it up to date over time because he was primarily the only person that had access to it or cared at that point about making sure that that was up to date over time. But by having this automatically linked into this template and having individuals know, well, I've got a standard data set that I can use that re-replicates all these systems that I know. I don't have to enter that information every single time. That got the both two effects. One, all of the architects to go in and start leveraging this template. There was a big incentive for them to begin using this because there was a centralized data set that everybody could start to leverage. So it made their ability to diagram these much faster. But also it gave them a big incentive to make sure that that centralized data set was up to date and current. And so by virtue of that, individuals would make sure that that data was up to date so that everybody could benefit. Thus, any document that was built off of that spreadsheet, if they ever wanted to make sure that their data was up to date, they just click this refresh button here up in the upper left by the data linking. This is using the Google Sheets integration, which allows for that automatic refresh just by clicking on that button. It'll pull that information back in. There are future upgrades happening to both Excel as well as the Google integration to also make some of those bi-directionally synced, which will continue to further impact the value that they're getting from each one of these. Um, that's this example. Now, using this template, talking about some of the benefits then in this case, this organization then made their development process much faster and far more effective. They also increased confidence and reliance on central standard data sets. By cutting down on rework, they made it easier for their teams to produce high quality deliverables and get their projects closer to the finish line. Teams now have a single source of truth for building polished and professional diagrams that help them communicate clearly with both technical and non-technical teams. While previously this data was scattered across systems, as I mentioned, and rarely kept up to date, their systems data is now consolidated within Lucid. And teams are driven to then keep this data up to date to ensure easy and accurate diagramming, regardless of how complex the visuals then become. The Director of Enterprise Architecture specifically saw this template directly supporting two of their company's OKRs, key OKRs. The first in increasing the percentage of quality deliverables completed and adopted, but then also increasing collaboration on content that's created, particularly in solutions like Lucid. This template created the visual language that they were lacking, allowing for streamlined cross-functional collaboration, time savings in diagram creation, and accelerated innovation. So big win for them.
All right, Christopher, there are so many things that I want to shout out and emphasize about this example. Like, I love having the key and the shapes and what the shapes mean, because if you're having, an entire organization or an entire department looking at a document, different colors and different shapes mean different things to different people. So just having that right there makes that, I think you had said earlier, that shared visual language, right? So the opportunity for misunderstanding decreases when that language is standardized. I love that. And then just having all the different ways to turn on and off the future state and the different indicators and things like that. I'm again imagining, earlier I was imagining all the processes typed out in like Word documents. Now I'm imagining all these different pictures and how hard it would be to model out different future states and print them out and things like that. So just having that all in one space, I get so excited about it because I can imagine how valuable that has been to your customers. And Christopher, I wanted to ask a question that came up in the Q&A, if that's okay.
Sure.
If this document, let's say, is available to a whole department or organization, how does the user view look different than the editor or the owner view? So if we don't want people, messing with it and stuff like that, how do the views look different?
Yeah, primarily the difference. So individuals are going to see a little bit less of like the options within the top. So if they got access to a board that was just view only, yeah, they would see something more akin to this. They would probably see some of those options not be available for them. The way that you can control much of that access is with the share button. Or within team folders. So the way that you share team folders, you can share based off of view only access or allow them to just comment, things like that. And then people would just see those functions that they would have access to. It's actually going to look very similar in nature, like on the actual diagram itself. It's just the changes in the navigation and the toolbars are going to be the primary things that would be different in the views that you're seeing. The only other thing to consider is there are publishment links that you can do with these as well that allow for even more streamlined view of the document itself. Again, the full document is available for viewing, but a lot of that navigation, toolbar, et cetera, like that stuff is stripped away to allow for just like a simple view of that. So publish links is also another potential that you can use for things of that nature.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Wow, we have lots of questions coming in. Our tech team in the background has been doing amazing at answering all of your questions that you've submitted. Thank you for your interest and your engagement. Thank you, Christopher and Joseph, for being with us today and taking the time to show these documents and the required work in the background, you know, to make sure it was all safe for us to share. That I really appreciate that work that you did to be able to present today. So it's been so helpful to kind of pull back that curtain and see how these organizations have turned their, you know, complex data into these very powerful visuals. So everyone's still here and still wanting some answers and things like that. So if we, let's see, we're going to jump into some Q&A. So everyone, if you have remaining questions, please drop them in the Q&A so that the tech team can answer, or we're going to have Christopher and Joseph answer some questions live. So right before we do that, we have a few resources for those who want to dive deeper. Oh yes, yeah, we have the template for the architecture build. So let's do the direct QR code will also be, yes, dropped in the chat. Perfect. And we also have a couple of courses that you can take to get more familiar with Lucid's platform. So someone had also asked that question about, you know, how can I learn more? There have been some really technical examples here. They're using some really cool capabilities, right? And being able to build with those capabilities is a new skill set. So we have badges and courses that you can take in the Lucid Training Lab. So that includes intelligent diagramming and whiteboarding foundations. I'm getting so excited, I'm talking too fast. And whiteboarding foundations, as you've seen throughout the presentation, you can switch seamlessly between Lucidchart and Lucidspark to access those unique feature sets, right? So intelligent diagramming and diagramming foundations, those courses will help you to master the capabilities in Lucidchart. And then whiteboarding foundations is about the Lucidspark feature set. At the end of those courses, you can actually earn a badge and show off your new skill set by adding it to LinkedIn to show your colleagues. So that is an awesome opportunity that we have. And also, if you want to have, you know, Christopher and Joseph or our professional services team build robust templates like you've seen, the ones that have been demonstrated today, if you want to have that for your organization, you can absolutely reach out to them. Reach out to them today. And remember, you will also receive an email later with all these resources included. So if you're furiously taking notes, don't worry, all these resources will be included in that email. All right, awesome. So here we go. We have some Q&A. Christopher and Joseph, are you ready?
Let's go.
Okay. Let's see. Let's do, can you show an example of visual activities? Oh, this is a good one. This is something that I really love. So, let's can we show it? Yeah, perfect. Okay. Let's talk about visual activities. Joseph, do you want to dive into that one and what that feature is about?
I want to talk about visual activities. That is one of the most unnecessary questions for anyone. I love visual activities. So what I want you to imagine is, you know, you're working with your team and you have a 1 hour meeting. And we all know that there are meetings that are just not long enough for 1 hour. But, you know, you only have 60 minutes. So you really want to make sure that 60 minutes is used to its optimal use, right? Well, what I would do is you come in and you say, I'm going to use Lucid's AI tool real quick here. And we're going to say topics for a strategy meeting. Now, when you're trying to craft a strong agenda and really make sure you're hitting those core ideas that are necessary for that meeting, this is where I think visual activities become a cool asynchronous tool that you can use. So for instance, I've got a few different things that your team might need to talk about. And let's imagine that they're topics that you'd actually need, okay? I'm going to come in here. I'm going to pull them in here. I'm going to make sure that that green hand is there. It makes it a votable object, right? And then we're going to change the, we're going to change these to urgency. And we're going to change this to, value. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Save Changes. I'm going to share that link. I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to change that real quick. We're going to change it to edit and share here real quick. And then I'm going to post this just internally with my fellow hosts and panelists so they can participate with me, okay? Now, they're going to jump in with me. And what we're all going to do is we're going to say, okay, what are the most important things I need to get out of this meeting? What are the most important topics? So this might be here. This might be here. And if my fellow Lucidites can help me by going on the back end and doing this, that'd be great. This needs to go here. Team roles, that's important. And it's, end of year performance reviews. We got to talk about this. Customer feedback, always important. Market trends, it's important, but the urgency is not super high. Oh, sorry, I flipped those. Yeah, competitor research, market channels, leadership styles. Yeah, we can talk about it a little bit later. I'm going to submit that response. Now, this is what I love. I get to see an automatic aggregate of my team's opinions. So I can see an automatic plot chart of where Christopher lies on this topic, where Tanya sits on this particular topic, where Morgan sits on this topic. And this is where meetings become important, because you could spend your time just setting up an agenda. This thing should go first because, alphabetical or however you want to sort it. With this, you get real insight to where your team is aligned and where your team isn't aligned. I love the way Lucid's chief product officer talks about it. He says it's having a crystal ball into the quietest person in the room's mind. You get to see where their opinion lies on this. It's not just loud Joseph and like, where did Joseph put it? I can look at, I could look at Augie and say, okay, how does Augie actually look at this? And that empowers me as a facilitator of a discussion to say, I think this is the most important topic we need to talk about. Because, yeah, the team's all aligned on, let's find one where we're kind of aligned. Yeah, market trends. We all kind of agree on that location. That means that it's lower priority. And that's something that could be an email or something that could be a Slack message. But this one, market channels, needs to be talked about. So I can allocate the position of that topic in the meeting, as well as the length of that topic in the meeting, dependent on that. So you can have smart agenda building within Lucid because of this. So that's just a quick look at some of the things we can do with visual activities. There's also great opportunities around, team building activities and things like that I love to do. Personal favorite that I'll recommend is the elephant in the office. It's a fun one that allows you to go in and put the different names of team members and then have them vote on, who's the risk taker in our team, who's the protector, who's gonna be the opportunity finder. And you get to see how everyone kind of voted on that, and you get to see how you're perceived by your team, as well as how you kind of self-perceive. It's a really fun one that Christopher and I do with our team, actually, like once a quarter. And it's always cool to see those responses. So those are 2 VAs that I showed real quick, and I'm going to give it back to you, Morgan, before I take the rest of this webinar talking about visual activities.
I love it. I love the enthusiasm. Also, I am so impressed, Joseph, that you just did that on the fly. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. It just shows how intuitive and how quickly you can use, the Lucid Suite to support whatever your objective is for whatever you're planning or ideating on, things like that. I love that you used collaborative AI to come up with some examples. That was really awesome. I would love to know if anyone in the audience has used visual activities. Have you used anything, or have you used any of these examples before? Would love to know if you're excited about it. If you see how your team could use this, let us know in the chat. And then, Christopher, let's see. We have a question about, we have lots of questions about sharing documents. So especially with the visual activities, wanting to know about licensing and guest collaborators and things like that. So could you just touch quickly on whether or not or how you can have guest collaborators that maybe don't have a Lucid license interact with your documents, boards, visual activities?
Yeah, primarily, especially within Lucidspark, we have guest collaborators, and so they can access up to 5 documents or so until they get prompted that you're going to need to get a license to go in and take a look at documents, participate. I actually use it pretty heavily. I teach on the side at a local university, and so I actually use Lucidspark for my classes. We hold all of our discussions in there, and we have different activities that we do, and I use the join ID in order to bring those individuals here into the board for this short period of time. And I can control access and whatnot to them. I could even put passwords if I needed to lock things down and make sure that people didn't get back into there again. If you're in situations where they just need access to a document for a short period of time, they're probably not going to need access to that again. That approach works really well. Also, using the publish option in Lucidchart is a great option for that as well. If you need people to just be able to visualize things, that doesn't count against accessing documents. That's just a publish link. Outside of that, you may need to start considering licensing for individuals, particularly when they're needing to access and reference a lot of documents and look at them within Lucid. I think this is actually where the power of integration starts to come in. So if you've got Confluence, for instance, or SharePoint, you can actually integrate those, embed them into Confluence so that people can see and access those, view-only versions of those, and that makes it very easy for people to be able to see that information. So there's a couple of different ways that you can handle that with regards to licensing questions.
Cool. I love that you also touched on the embedding, because that was another question we had about, we do that on our team, right? We have all our documentation stored in our documentation software, but we embed those charts and the boards and things like that. And that is so useful. All right, let's do, Christopher, are you ready for another question? We have about 5 minutes left. Okay.
Okay, we can do rapid fire if you want.
Okay, let's do, is there any way to show real-time data from web tables?
Okay, so what I understand this question to mean is, essentially how live can we show the data within Lucid if I'm pulling from some other data source? I think talking specifically about things like, and Joseph, if you want to go over to the architecture diagramming template, we can show this example here. If you're using like Google Slides, or sorry, Google Sheets, for instance, the integration within there, as Joseph is showing, like allows you to be able to set the refresh. So this is automatically getting refreshed every 30 seconds without us actually clicking the buttons in here. So yes, this can be real time. That's what we mean by real time in this case. If you need to do things that push data, different frequencies or whatever, we actually have an extension platform that you can build your own integrations, particularly things that import data in from other systems. If it's not something that comes out of the box, for instance, with Lucid. So, the Excel, Google Sheets, CSV, or a number of other systems that actually come out of the box. The extension API is very accessible there. You can get there at developer.lucid.co and see how to build your own integrations that create that same kind of real-time experience.
Awesome. And then really quick, while we're talking about data, does the reference data, so for example, the data that Joseph showed and was pulling from, Melissa asked, does the data need to be consistently formatted, or can it be brought in messy and then cleaned up in Lucid?
If you're trying to do stuff where like you're just going to immediately visualize something, it does need to be cleaned up going into Lucid. However, the way that I would think through this is potentially I would bring some of that data into Lucidspark and then maybe even move some of those data elements into a dynamic table. And that would allow me to visualize the information as it currently stands and then decide, well, where do we want to standardize columns? Where do we want to standardize rows? What does this data currently look like? What sort of rows or columns come out of just looking at this? What should our primary keys be? And so potentially you can use dynamic tables like Joseph is showing here, and then pull different data pieces if that's Jira issues, or you could import a CSV into here. Each one of those becomes sticky notes within this, and then you can take that messy data and then organize it and structure it in a way that you say like, okay, well, that's the way that we want to do it. You would still need to export that. There are CSV exports of the data that's held within here. And then re-import that more standardized set in order to really take advantage of the power of Lucidchart in that case.
Cool. Amazing. Joseph's doing an amazing job driving us around
Yeah,
the screen.
fantastic.
So one last question for you, Christopher, and I think this is a great one to end on with our last 2 minutes before we say goodbye. This question says, if I want to steer an organization toward using Lucid, what roles would be the people who are most likely to move this forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first off, one of the things that hopefully you're seeing from this is that though there are a couple of like really core use cases, really anybody can be leveraging Lucid. I loved the comment earlier of like, we love how you're using Lucidspark to do slides. We actually help many organizations to be able to do presentations and training and whatnot using Lucid as a much more collaborative experience for those kinds of things. So, all the way from technical diagramming and IT teams, all the way to human resources or people ops, lots of different teams that can leverage this. So I think that's one way to look at this is who are the primary teams and organizations that could get the most immediate benefit and value from leveraging the Lucid Suite. In many cases, the defaults end up being IT teams, project management, process management, product management, things of that nature are really easy starting points. The other place to go would be to look at some of the tools that Lucid typically replaces, not just as a one-to-one replacement, but Lucid can replace multiple at once. So for instance, Lucid, if you've got Miro, Mural, and or Visio right now, Lucid is the one tool that replaces all of those things. So I would go to those organizations, find some of those stakeholders, and then say, hey, wouldn't we be able to take some savings as an organization, simplify our tech stack to focus in on a single tool that not only replaces these, but then does everything leaps better. And so I would take that kind of approach in order to identify and find places where we could start to draw people towards that. And our account teams are available and ready to help with even just talking through what some of those opportunities might look like. So feel free to reach out to some of our sales teams. They're very happy to take a look at and say like, okay, in this kind of a scenario, here's the direction that would best help you with bringing in tooling like this. And then you can leverage some of the support from our professional services organization to help you migrate over from each one of these tools, make it very easy and seamless.
I love that plug for the professional services.
Ah.
Amazing. Amazing, amazing. We've had so much incredible interaction in the chat. Thank you all so much for being here. Joseph, any final words before we close out?
None at all. Thank you so much for coming, everyone.
And Christopher, any final words before we close out?
Nope. Go have fun and visualize things in Lucid. Get some visual collaboration going.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your questions and your interactions. Have a great day. We'll see you. Bye. Bye.